Hi there, folks. I hope you are all doing well. This is Eric from Hit Subscribe, and I am here doing yet another installment of the Freelancer Q&A series that I've been doing for a long time on this channel. Also, please bear with me here if my voice is a little less forceful than usual. I mean, not that anybody would ever accuse me of that, but I do seem to have a touch of a bug or something. So my voice has been a little off and hoarse today, and I will try to power through that. Anyway, I'm not exactly chumming the waters for a high energy video here, so my apologies for that. But I do have hopefully an interesting topic that might be relevant to some of you out there. I chose this one because it actually came up in a Slack that I was in today where somebody was asking a question about the idea of client testimonials. I'm not going to go into that specific question because they weren't really asking me specifically, but also because I think that's a much more corner case. But I did recall that hanging out here, I had a question in the backlog about client testimonials. And I'm not sure if this is a topic I've ever covered on the channel before, so maybe we're breaking some new ground. But basically, this is a simple one. So the actual question here is, are testimonials important? And if so, how do you go about asking for them? So kind of a two-parter here. I will first, I guess, tackle the subject of whether client testimonials are important or not. And then I'll get into how to go about asking for them. Because what I'll say up front is you're probably better off having testimonials in your back pocket than not having them, regardless of what kind of business you do. So important, I'll get into that in a moment. It's going to kind of vary depending on the nature of your business and how you're marketing and selling. But they're certainly worth doing or thinking about. So for anybody watching, it's probably worth understanding how you might go about asking for client testimonials. So are they important or not? I would say for most businesses, yes. And, you could probably do a whole deep dive on the role of social proof in selling, which is really what you're talking about. So you're, showing prospects that somebody else in the past has done business with you and considered it to be a good decision. And from a sales psychology perspective, this is actually really important. One of the main things that people will look to during a buying process to alleviate uncertainty is taking some comfort in the fact that others have made a similar decision about working with a vendor or adopting a tool or whatever, and it's gone well for them. You often, whether you realize it or not, from a psychological perspective, you don't want to be the only person that's ever taken a flyer on such and such, because I think psychologically speaking, you're out on a limb there. I've definitely read about this in the past. I can't remember the specifics, but social proof is an important component of selling. So it is a valuable thing to have in your back pocket for most businesses. And by the way, this is why if you go onto a lot of sites for like SaaS or tools or services or whatever the case may be, you're probably used to seeing this. You go up onto a website and there's a carousel of people offering quotes about the offering. That's a common tactic for a reason. It's because you're offering up social proof. So this isn't just purely a matter of mimicry that you see other people doing it and you should also do it. There is actual value in it. And the testimonials don't only have to be on your site in some kind of carousel. You might put them into a proposal deck. I actually do that in Hit Subscribe's templated proposal deck. I have a few different quotes from past clients that speak to the particulars of what I'm doing in that proposal. So there are different ways you can layer in testimonials as part of your sales process. Now, whether they're important or not is going to depend to an extent on, I would say, just to kind of avoid boiling the ocean, price and how weighty a decision a person is making by buying from you. Now, this isn't to say that if you sell something for $9.99, testimonials or social proof don't matter. There's a reason that you go out if you're selling a book and you try to get like quotes from people and get favorable reviews and all that. Like, people will look for social proof even for minor purchases. But I do think that depending on the pricing of what you're offering and depending on how major a decision it is or not, on balance, if you're talking about a $10 thing, it's probably not going to be a big deal for most people. So they're not going into that being like, oh no, what if I waste $10? Probably, frankly, for something like a book, the reason testimonials are important is less because of the money and more because of the time. You're committing, however long it's going to take, 5, 10, 15 hours to read a book. So people probably don't want to waste 5, 10, 15 hours more than they don't want to waste $10. So if you're selling something that's like minor, you can sign up for a SaaS for $10 a month and cancel any time. It's probably not as important to you to go out and get a bunch of testimonials and have social proof. I mean, maybe that can help, but it's really going to be a matter of the consequence of the decision being made. Now, most of you watching, if you're freelancers, what you are selling is 5 to 6 figures of services, and that's a fairly major purchase for most organizations. I mean, it might not be if you're doing staff augmentation for an enterprise or something, but by and large, what you are selling is a reasonably major decision, or you're deciding to engage with you is reasonably major. So for most people that are watching, most people that would tune into this channel, you probably do have a business that could materially benefit from social proof. Where this might be mitigated a little bit is if you're hawking services on Upwork or some kind of brokerage. I mean, you want to go out and get reviews there in the same way that you do if you're driving for Uber or whatever. It's generally good to have those, but if you're in kind of a more commodified position, you're probably going to be running through somebody else's screening process. So there, the qualification of your services, your participation in an RFP is going to be more up to the buyer. So, they might ask for references and there's your social proof, but they might also, give you quizzes or ask you why manholes are round or whatever. So it's probably less important if your sales process is commodified and dictated by other people. It would be good to have in the same way that maybe a portfolio in that scenario would be good to have, but like going out and getting actual quotes and testimonials, usually this is going to be reserved for a business or practice that is mature enough to own its own sales process and be the one that is determining how sales go. I do a discovery and then I do this, that, and the other. If you've got that going, if you've got a website, if you have procedures and processes for business acquisition and onboarding, and you're a freelancer, you're selling service, now is yes, you want social proof, you want testimonials. As for how important it is, it's really going to vary by your situation and even like your pipeline. I mean, it's not going to be super important if people are already banging down the door because your marketing is killer and you have more business than you can fulfill. Then maybe getting the testimonials and so on isn't quite as important. What testimonials really do, what social proof really does, is it's I would call it a sales enablement tactic. So the testimonials are not going to be relevant to you the first time somebody ever encounters your website or your brand or you, because they're not in that moment likely considering a purchase. The social proof becomes relevant when you've been in their orbit, you've talked, you're incurring a nurture sequence or whatever you're prospecting, and then eventually they get around to thinking about doing business with you. That's when that type of, let's call it content, becomes more important. So the reason, that it might be situational as to whether this is important to your business or not is, how would I put this? If currently your sales is a strength, if everybody that starts to think about doing business with you, you close, then you probably don't really need to work on that too much. Like you got 100% close rate. Maybe the thing you need to work on is getting more people's attention or getting more referrals or whatever. But if there's any weakness, if you could stand to improve your close rate, then it might be more of a point of emphasis to go out and get social proof. If you perceive that you might be losing business to inaction or to competitors or something like that, then potentially making a more compelling case for yourself in the sales process can help. So to summarize how important it is, I would say for most businesses, especially service businesses, you want to do this. It's worth doing. It's worth having in your back pocket. How important it is to you might be a little bit more situational depending on how you're currently acquiring business and how that's going. So hopefully I've answered that question now. The subsequent question becomes, how do you go about getting testimonials? Now, I'm going to assume the person that was asking this was doing so in the context of I'm trying to drum up some business or I'm trying to improve my win rate, and I really have no procedures for this in place whatsoever. And in that situation, what you are most likely going to do is look back through your inbox or your CRM, hopefully, if you have that, or your mental Rolodex or whatever, and you're going to start to think, who have I done business with that likes me and would be willing to say kind things about me? So you're going to be sort of reactive or ex post facto in a sense when you're doing this. Most likely, if you're watching this and you've never thought about testimonials before, that's the situation that you're in. It is not the situation that I am typically in when it comes to this sort of thing. I'll speak to that and what I would do kind of on a longer timeline in a little bit here. So I'll get to that, informed by, in fact, how Hit Subscribe does this. But let's assume that you've never thought about this and you want to go do it, and you're going to be reaching out to people and kind of asking them for a favor. Okay, so you're now looking at maybe a list of names that you've brainstormed and gathered and curated, and you're getting ready to write them an email and basically say, hey, I could use testimonials on my website or in my sales collateral. Would you mind offering me a testimonial? That's what you're about to gear up and do. And if you're, introverted like I am, that probably seems like sort of a semi-onerous and daunting task to go ask somebody for a favor, even if you're on good terms with them. It's a little, I don't know, awkward. I always hated when I was an employee being like, hey, will you be a reference for me? And then, I don't know, all that felt a little weird always. I mean, anyway, I don't want to get down the rabbit hole of silly things about the employment process. So you're about to reach out to these people and you're going to ask them to say a kind thing about you. Now, there are different ways you can go about doing this. The way that I wouldn't go about doing this if I were you is to say, hey, Susan, it's been a while. I hope you're doing well. Anyway, I was thinking back on our prior engagement, and would you be willing to give me a testimonial for my website? It's a perfectly reasonable thing to ask from kind of a politeness perspective if you did good work for her and, she thinks highly of you. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing, but it might not be the most effective, and there is kind of a subtle thing that you're doing, which is you're giving her some homework. So you're actually saying, hey, Susan, it's been a while since you thought about me, but I want a quote that would help me out. So can you just go ahead and go back and remind yourself of what we did together? Maybe go back and consult your notes, read through old emails, and recontextualize what on earth we were even doing together. And then for further homework, you can kind of summarize all that into a thing and then come up with a nice thing to say about me. Now, I realize you're not actually saying that, but that's the implication. You're giving Susan a homework assignment. And Susan, even with the best of intentions, might read that, want to do it, but also be like, wow, that seems like a lot of work. Like, what do we do? What should I say? And then she might say, you know what, I'll respond to this tomorrow. And then she gets busy with something tomorrow and continues to get busy. And eventually a month has gone by and she might not have even responded to your email, even though she intended to help you out. It was just kind of too heavy a lift because it required her to go do a lot of, digging back through old emails, remembering, and putting together a nice website ready thing to say, to be quoted with her picture up there, and it's kind of asking for a lot. So if you're going to do a retroactive request for testimonials, I would personally do as much of that legwork for your prospective testimonial folks as you can. So at a bare minimum, what I would do is put together a quick summary for them and say, instead of, hey, Susan, remember how we did some work together? Anyway, could you give me a testimonial? It might take more of the effect of, do you remember how you engaged me to do X? Here were a few of the highlights. Here is, the value that you got out of it. If you, remember or made a note of, and by the way, I'll come back to this. If you made a note of something in particular that she said about the value that she got out of it, like reminding her of that, that is kind of table stakes for me. So give them a nice summary to help the people that you're reaching out to remember what you did together and why it helped them. Another thing that I would definitely do, this one's a little bit more nuanced because some people might take umbrage to it if you don't do it quite right, but I have an opinion about how to do that. Anyway, you might actually write out the testimonial for them that you want to put up on the website. Now, some people might balk at you reaching out and saying, hey, here's some words that I'm putting in your mouth. Is it okay if I do that? So you need to manage this. And the way I would manage it is to say, hey, Susan, if you'll recall, we did X, Y, and Z together, what I was just talking about. So put that together and then say, and I'm putting particular emphasis on this value that I'm delivering with my offering. So here's an example of the kind of quote that I'm looking for, and then you spell out what you're giving her the easy button that she could say. Um, Steve is an excellent provider of Ruby on Rails app dev. He did blah, 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 So you write that out, but you, instead of offering it to Susan as, this is what I want to quote you as saying, it's more like, this is an example of the kind of quote I would be looking for. But obviously feel free to completely use your own words, throw this out, whatever. I'm just trying to, make things easy for you, or I'm just trying to give you an example of the sort of thing I'm looking to say, because if you're Susan, like if it were me and what they said was even remotely accurate, I would be much more inclined to be like, yeah, sure, go ahead and attribute that to me on your website, whatever you like, because that's way easier. Now I just have to write back in the email. And if this is a bookkeeper, somebody that I've engaged with in the past, maybe don't remember it very well. Hey, we did this together. Would you, here's an example, Eric, of, the kind of testimonial I'm looking for. And if it's mostly accurate, if it's something that I would, yeah, that's true, then it's much easier for me because all I have to do is reply to the email with like, yep, that looks good. So it can be an easy button for the person you're asking. But if they're more particular about how they're going to be quoted, you've given them an out, which is, this is an example of what I want. And so they might be wondering, do you want like an 800-word testimonial or just like 2 sentences? Your example is going to help them lock in on how best to phrase this in their own words. So now you have given them a recap of what you did together as helpful context, an example of what you would like to see. Now it's a pretty easy thing that they can probably just bang out in 5 minutes in reply to your email. So they'll just go ahead and take care of it and say yes in the moment. I mean, obviously, this is no guarantee that they're going to say yes. Maybe they don't feel comfortable giving a testimonial for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't actually like you as much as you thought they might have. There's all kinds of reasons they might say no. But you're taking the labor-intensive ones out of the mix and just making it easier for them to say yes. Another bit of advice that I would give when asking for testimonials in this fashion is be mindful of anything that would make it more likely that they would say no, and maybe inoculate against it, or just don't ask. So for instance, if you were under like an NDA, under like top secret double probation clearance, and helping them in a nuclear test site, and you're never allowed to say that, don't even bother asking them for a testimonial. If something about the nature of your engagement made a testimonial inappropriate or unlikely somehow, then skip that person. Don't even put them in the position. Or if you must, start it off by saying, totally understand if you don't want to do this, but anyway. So be sensitive to the likelihood that they'll give you a testimonial. And I would also make sure that you're asking for testimonials from people who are likely to view what you did for them as valuable. So don't just do a spray and pray and hope somebody who never seemed happy with you has something kind to say. Just stick to people who you provided value for. Now, if you're thinking longer term, what I would suggest you do is what we have adopted doing at Hit Subscribe many years back. So Hit Subscribe's account managers, when they're having conversations and check-in calls with clients, if a client says something kind of extemporaneously that is, oh, I really appreciated that you did X, or wow, that performed really well, or whatever the case may be. So if during the course of your engagement they are unprompted saying something that is praiseworthy, that is reflective of the value that they're getting, that they're impressed, and so on and so forth, we, I think Aaron maintained a spreadsheet called Client Delight, and you just stick things in there along with who said them and when. Now what you've got is this running list of pre-canned testimonials. So we're not crucially, at least I don't believe, I'm not directly involved in this anymore, but I don't think the account managers are actually asking them when they say that, interrupting the good vibes to say, hey, can I put that on the website? It's that you're noting it. And so that when the time comes to add some testimonials, you're really just reaching back out to people and saying, hey, Susie, if you recall, we had this engagement together anyway. I noted down that you said this. Is it all right if I quote you on our website? And in my experience, the the rate at which people say yes to that is darn near 100%, if it's not 100%. I actually can't recall having a quote of anybody that we then reached out to and said, hey, can we quote you on this? And then they said, actually, no. So you're pre-doing the work. If you have a process like this, just noting any delight that people offer up, you're pre-doing the work, and you're, almost guaranteeing that the answer will be yes. So I would definitely, reach back out, try to get the testimonials that you can. But going forward, just, as part of your note taking whenever you're engaged with clients, make sure to get a quote of anything they say that is particularly praiseworthy or good to have, or just that would look good up on your website. Make a note of it, keep track of it, and then reach out to them later about it. I will say I'm not an expert in this. Actually, as it turns out, we're looking at engaging in a couple of weeks somebody who specializes in this to maybe audit the process that we have, and help write up some case studies, things to help Lindsay, who's now doing work on the sales front with sales collateral. So I might actually have more insights in this later. It is a developing situation, so stay tuned. If I learn anything particularly earth-shattering, maybe I'll do another video on this later, a part 2, if you will. But I do hope for those of you out there that are doing service businesses, this is at least somewhat interesting and helpful, and I will catch you all next time.